This is All of It on WNYC. I'm Allison Stewart. Coming up on the show tomorrow, it's a full show full of great performers. Adrian Brody will be here to discuss The Fear of 13 on Broadway. We'll also have a bunch of cast members from Rocky Horror, and we'll speak to the longest-running genie in Broadway's Aladdin and his replacement who will take over the role on Sunday, plus some live music in our studio from MTA Subway musicians, the West 4th Trio. That is happening tomorrow on the show. Now let's keep things going with an off-Broadway show that you have a few more days to check out. It's almost last call to see the off-Broadway revival of Claire Barron's play You Got Older, in which actor Aaliyah Shawkat made her New York stage debut as a woman in limbo. When we first meet her character, May, she's lost her boyfriend, and because her boyfriend is also her boss, she's lost her job, too. She's moved home to Washington State to live with her dad, who is grappling with cancer. The play follows May as she tries to find her footing and figure out what's next amid her father's illness, some graphic sexual fantasies, and a mysterious rash. You Got Older is directed by Annie Kaufman, who also directed the production when it last ran in New York in 2014. The New York Times calls it, quote, a gorgeous play and a sharp revival. It's running now at the Cherry Lane Theater until May 3rd. Aaliyah, Annie, and Claire joined me just a few weeks ago to talk about the play. And since it will be ending soon, we wanted to revisit the conversation. I began by asking Claire what was going on in her life when she wrote the play.
The sort of given circumstances of the play were very personal. My dad was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer of the head and neck, and I was dating my boss, and we did break up, and he did fire me within 30 seconds of breaking up. So that is true. Those are the true facts. But then there's, of course, like in the writing of the play, lots of transformation that takes it away from my personal life.
Was it cathartic for you to write it down?
It was very cathartic. You know, I was writing it sort of in real time. I was literally in the hospital with my dad at Ronald McDonald Housing in Seattle as I was writing the play. And, you know, everyone kept telling me, just write whatever you need to write. Like, it takes a million years for plays to be produced. No one will ever see this. You'll be like 5 years older before it ever comes out. And then the first production ended up happening like 6 months after I wrote the play. So it was like
oh my gosh,
very surprising. Yes.
Wow, just 6 months after?
Yeah, I think I had my first public reading of the
that.
play in June, and then we were in front of an audience by October. So it was very expedited.
Aaliyah, what drew you to the role of May?
I just really responded to the piece, you know? I mean, I haven't done, theater before like this, and I was like, it's going to have to take something that I'm really drawn to for the idea to work on it for so long and to do it over and over and over again. But I always like to quote Claire when she said a play is like a spell. And I was like, this is the perfect spell that I wanted to cast every night.
Doing it over and over again, what have you learned?
Imagine, I was like, nothing, not one thing.
I learned a darn thing.
All kinds of stuff, I don't know how to be in my body, how to be not so hard on yourself and know you can do it again. Those kind of things. Yeah, it worked for life.
And as you directed this production in 2014, and it's a decade plus, you're directing it again.
Yeah.
What did you get from the first experience directing this play that was helpful to you this time around?
Well, it's such an interesting question because I too was going through, actually, Claire and I were talking about this last night. I was also going through it. I was getting divorced and my mother had just passed away.
Oh,
and so we were both in a moment of crisis. And, I wasn't going to work for a while because I was just in, suffering such grief. And this play came across my table and I had to do it. And I had to do it because of the family in it. My family is very similar. Claire and I both come from big families, and it was a way of working through my grief. And it's so wild doing it again when I'm not in the middle of all of that, I feel not in the middle of all of that. I feel clear-headed. I feel a little bit more, I have distance on it. And what really, I think, helped the first time around is the impact that it's had on audiences. Like, it was super helpful for me to be working on it, cathartic for me to be working on it, to work through all of that. And what I realized, I mean, when it was playing is how it is so personal for so many people. So I just knew that we had another, I knew we had the gold.
Alia, what have you learned from Anne?
I mean, never doing a play before, seeing what a director actually does really blew my mind. Like, starting from just rehearsals, it was more similar, where we were talking, Claire and Annie and I just every day, like, breaking apart everything. And it was so fun to rehearse so much, because normally you don't get nearly that much time. But then when we actually got onto the stage, I was like, what? How is she doing all these things at once? Being like, this needs to come up 5 seconds later, and then this needs to move. And the thing I learned the most, I think, overall, which we talked about a lot, was like, there would be a problem, as there was every day, many. And I'd just be like, well, that's it. We're never going to figure it out. I was like, how are we ever going to get the outfit to get into the thing? And she was like, no, we'll build a drawer and we'll figure so, like, there was just always a problem solving, because everything is so practical.
Yeah.
And I think I was just really like, wow, she never took it. She was like, no, there's always going to be a way that's going to make it smoother, faster, better, and just more cohesive. And it was really so satisfying to see it happen in real time. I was like, wow. She just solved all the problems right in front of us.
We're talking about the new play, You Got Older, a new production of the play, You Got Older, with actor Alia Shawkat, director Annie Kaufman, and playwright Claire Barron. It's about a young woman who returns home to care for her father with cancer. It's running now at the Cherry Lane Theater. Claire, when you were writing May, what qualities did you want May to have?
Gosh, I mean, I was sort of like having her speak. It was almost like all of the sort of taboo thoughts, especially around, I'm sure people can relate to this, around illness and having a parent who's sick and parent-child relationships, and her own sort of like yearning for her life when you're sort of like in your late 20s, early 30s, and you're trying to launch and it's so hard to launch. And I wanted her to be emotionally raw. I wanted to have sort of like access to her id, I wanted to be like inside her. And so, but it was very like, it's also like a little bit based on my personality and moments where I am saying things that I shouldn't be saying, or you're sort of like maybe revealing more than I realize I'm revealing. But I wanted her to be resilient, but I also, it is like a kind of a moment of weakness in her life where she's feeling really on her back. And so I was interested in being really honest about what that feels like when really the rug pulls out from under you and you're just like so raw and vulnerable, and with your parents.
How is May feeling about herself when she's living at her dad's house, Leo? What is she thinking about?
What is she thinking about? I think, desire. I feel like Claire and I talked about that a lot, just this idea of what you want and what you feel like you can get and what you feel like you can't. She's kind of trying to escape into fantasy, anything to not really be present with the reality of where her life's at, I think that's something I was drawn to so much in this piece, was these beautifully, simply written scenes with the dad, and yet they're so layered, and it's like how it's just so hard to be present with your family, and especially when you're like, time's running out, and you feel this more pressure. And I do that all the time. Like I'm annoyed with my parents when I'm with them, and then I leave, and then I'm heartbroken because I miss them and I know they'll be gone one day. So it's just like, it's such a vicious kind of cycle,
Annie, I want to talk about Peter Friedman. He's amazing in this show. People know him from Succession. They know him from Job. Was off at Soho House recently. He's been in theater for a really long time. What does he bring to the role of the father?
Peter doesn't understand what it is to manufacture an emotion. He just doesn't do it. He won't do it. I feel like Peter's someone who can maybe go in the wrong direction, that I have to, steer him in a certain direction, but it's always going to be so honest and so, I I almost want to say guileless, because I feel like there's a kind of I know this is going to sound so weird, but there's some kind of like playful innocence that Peter has in the room and in all of his characters, even if he's playing someone who has a malevolent intention, even if. So there's always this really pure core at the very center of him that just exudes honesty. And I mean, Claire and I were talking about this last night. I think Alia has it too. I'm just going to say one other thing about, sorry, I don't mean to embarrass you, but I think the other thing that's kind of amazing about the two of them is that Peter is someone who he's a theater animal, and he works in television. Alia is a TV and film animal, but has somehow, and I was talking about this with Peter last night, somehow understands theater, and that does not. I want everyone to understand how rare that is.
Yeah,
that is
it's a big deal.
It's a huge deal. And of course, I could give a lecture on what that is, but I won't. But Peter is just, I mean, he just has that pure spirit. He also has a can do. He's going to just jump in with both feet. I don't know, the lack of self-consciousness, I think, is one of his magic elements.
Aaliyah, how would you describe May's relationship with her dad?
There was this really beautiful article that Annie sent us that was in the New Yorker that was talking about how the character of Dad, as he's written in the play, is a rare character of just like a good dad.
He's a good dad.
He's just a good dad. And he's like, and something that we've talked about is like, the mother passed away. And this idea that like the mother was maybe the more kind of physical, nurturing one. And he was always a good dad, but maybe not there to, I couldn't cry on his shoulder and he wouldn't hold me if I had a breakup, or he wouldn't know how to, I didn't have to talk to him about my period, whatever. That was what Mom's job was. And then with her gone and now this, he can see I'm struggling, but he's like trying to help, but he just doesn't know how. And that's why it's so beautiful at the end, this moment where she asks her father just to touch this lump in her neck, and it's something so simple, but it's so profound, I think. And so I think they have a good relationship on the surface, where it's like, yeah, I talk to my dad. He's a good guy. He's always been there for me. He doesn't yell that much. He's like, we don't fight a lot. He's a simple, sweet guy. But does he really know who I am? I don't know. Does he know the layers of the complexity of what I'm processing? No. Does he know how kinky I am? No. All these things about that we hide from our family as like shame. And I think May is holding a lot and doesn't think he can understand it. And then just at the end, she opens the door just a little to be like, maybe he can. And he does. He holds that space. So I think they have I think it's a really beautiful relationship, actually, even if it's trying to grow like the little pepper.
And how about your relationship with Peter Friedman?
No comment. I mean, he's the greatest. Yeah. Everything that Annie said plus a million. I mean, he's so kind and giving, and, it's not an easy schedule. It's new for me. And we were doing 8 shows a week, and he's just there always, so much energy, so present, so kind, and playful with everybody. And if like one little thing goes wrong, backstage, he'll be like, oh, well, just throw it off, keep moving. Because I think sometimes if one thing went wrong, I was like, no, but what happened? And he's like, it's okay. Like, we got it. Keep going. And it's like anytime I'm out of my head or a little too like, if I'm nervous or just thinking ahead too far, I just look at him in the eyes and he drops me in instantly. He's just like, I'm here. And I'm like, whoa, okay, now I'm present. It's like playing not present because I'm so present. That's how I'm able to do it.
Claire, were you interested in writing about how illness affects a family?
Yeah, I think something that is painful about the play is that illness in your family truly is a universal experience. You might experience in childhood, you might experience in your 20s, 30s, 40s, but like at some point, it's coming for every family. I mean, it's so traumatic, but it's so common. And for me, I guess I was 27 when my dad got sick, and we were told he had 2 months to live. He's still with us today, which is amazing. He's actually in Sicily right now on a vacation with my mom, not seeing the play, which I'm happy for them. But yeah, so our story has a happy ending, but
Yeah.
it's just I remember when we were in the tunnel and I didn't know if he was going to make it or not. I remember just like I would do these little rituals. I was living in New York. My family lives in rural Washington State. And I remember every night before I slept, I'd send like 100 healing breaths to my dad. I would just like breathe in and breathe out and just think of him. And I used to go run the track, and I have 6 people in my family, and I used to run like 6 laps on lane 6, just like, you're so powerless, but you're
Wow.
just like almost trying to come up with like magic rituals to try to like help him be okay. And it's so painful to be so out of control, and it's so painful to lose a parent. I think at any age. I lost my grandmother when she was 98, and she was a very important person to me. And even though she lived such a long life, and I'm so grateful for that, it didn't change the fact that when we finally lost her, it was still just like incredibly difficult. So yeah, this was sort of like one of my first major experiences with illness, and it really impacted me.
Oh yeah, in the play, May doesn't talk a whole lot in the beginning, and then she goes to this bar and she meets Mac, and she just unloads. What is it about meeting this sort of a stranger that causes her to open up?
Yeah, I mean, I think a stranger is a kind of a welcoming kind. Stranger is the perfect place to unload your baggage. I think it's kind of like a perfect storm. Like she snuck out of the house, and she had like a beer in her, and someone just needed to go hi, and she's like, blah! All over the place. If she doesn't talk, she's gonna die, I think Annie said to me at one point. So it's like, yeah, it's like the perfect place to, and Mac, is such a kind of lovable character, especially played by Caleb. It's like he's such an amazing actor, and it's like it's just this perfect, like, he's kind of unaware of what he kind of fell into.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you, Annie, about directing the character of Mac. When you talked to the actor about it, was it Caleb?
Yeah.
What did you tell him was his role? Like, what was his purpose?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I feel like I approached it more like who he is, who he is in this town
Yeah.
and what it is that he does and why he's here. And I did say at some point that, I think he can be overwhelmed by the stuff that's coming at him from her. And also he's a little bit of the audience. He's sort of, we're all hearing this for the very first time. I mean, if some people didn't, walk into the show having read nothing and aren't privy to what's happening on Peter's neck in the first couple of scenes, they don't know what's going on. They don't know that he's sick. They don't know what's happening with May. And so he's learning a lot of the stuff at the same time we're learning it. So, and that he can actually absorb all of that and actually respond is just as a testament to who he is as a character and as an actor. I mean, Caleb is astonishing. Yeah.
Let's talk about sexual fantasies. Claire, you're up first. A big part of the stories are these sexual fantasies that May has. It's involving a cowboy, and we see them acted out on stage. Why did you want erotic fantasies to play such a big role in this story?
Yeah, I mean, some of it is just, I'm a very like impulsive writer. And when I was like in my dad's hospital room, I was writing these very grounded, naturalistic scenes with my dad. And then I was also writing these crazy sex fantasies with a cowboy. And I just have a little bit of a witchy sensibility. And I was like, they have to go together somehow. Like somehow these have to be part of the same piece. But I do think it's like a divide. I'm really close with my parents, but never talk to them about dating, never talk to them about my sex life. I'm a very sexual person. So it feels like almost a symbol for the ways in which we have this little chasm between us of the things I would never say to them. And yeah, I just like couldn't imagine sharing with my father. But the iconography of the fantasy, it's very like romance novel, but darker and more twisted, maybe a little more human. But I grew up, reading all those books. We used to go to the library with my sisters when we were like in middle school, and we'd check out these romance novels, and the librarian would be like, "Ooh, that's a good one," and we'd always sort of be like, "Okay," like, but like there's something about, yeah, I mean, even that, I grew up in a very conservative town, so something between the tension of like not being supposed to talk about these things and then having, like Alia said, the desire, having the impulse. There's something in that relationship that really fascinates me.
I like that the librarian read the romance novels.
Yeah.
He did, yeah.
Annie, how did you want those scenes to feel different from the rest of the play, the fantasy scenes?
I mean, again, like good writing and good acting, it just sort of it does happen. But I'm just going to step back for a second and then answer that question. I also feel like, I mean, I think that you'd have to come and watch a bunch of times, but there is on the set, there is a bunch of cowboy romance novels that are in the bedroom. There's also I think a sense, like a big part of this play also is, what is it like to go back home and be in even though it's not May's bedroom per se, it is the childhood sort of experience, and what are the things that you're thrown back into in terms of like what your desires are, like what are the things that you used to masturbate to when you were younger, and also just the way that we watch May turn into a child with her dad, a bit. But I think in terms of the sexual fantasies, I mean, it's a little bit of a game. I mean, and tonally we were really kind of experimenting. I think the first scene, I like the idea that you don't know what's going on, and that it's not until a certain point that you start to realize. There are like a couple of points that are like the big one being dad interrupting, but that you realize what's going on. But once you understand what's going on, when the cowboy comes back, you want to be able to play with those tropes, you know what I mean? And then it turns ugly. So we're actually watching May's own journey through those sexual fantasies. We're watching an arc of how she's dealing, with all of her trauma.
The family comes into the play about, was it a third, halfway through? Aaliyah, what is it like for you? You've been on stage. It's kind of been you on stage. And all of a sudden, there's the whole family, brothers, sisters. Your dad's in the hospital. And suddenly it becomes an ensemble.
I mean, it's amazing. It's such a fun part of the show. Also, like when I go out on stage, I say goodbye to my sisters in the dressing room, and I'm like, "I'll see you out there." And it's and such amazing actors. Everybody. I mean, Nadine Malouf and Nina White and Misha Brooks too. Like just really, really amazing actors. And it's so, I feel so like held. Not to sound cheesy, but it's like everyone who's seen the show says you guys seem like a real family. Everyone's like, you really seem like siblings, because there's something that's tapped into. And also now later in the run, we're now doing all these like little things where we're like looking at each other, where we're like, oh my God, Hannah, like making eyes, like she's driving us crazy. And like just all these things, I have two brothers, and we're just like really picking up these real sibling like things now. And I think it's the casting, but also like when we were doing the rehearsal, I was also like, wow, this is such a long scene and there's so much overlap and timing. It's very orchestra, it's like reading it's so fun. And I was like, well, how are we gonna do it? And now it's just like it's like a rhythm, like we're like a jazz band, it's like we're speaking over each other, back, forth, over, and it's like it's so fun because there's subtleties and difference every night, but just getting to fold into that, it's really fun. Yeah, it's so fun.
Claire, what do you hope people leave the theater thinking about or talking about?
Oh gosh, I guess maybe two things. I hope people call their parents or their loved ones or their siblings or whoever in their life represents that. I hope there's like the impulse to reach out and say I love you. And yeah, also the stuff we were talking about with desire. I hope people maybe get a little inspired by some of those cowboy scenes, not in the bad way, but just sort of like lift the rock up and see what's under there when they think about, being playful with what excites them. So two very, very different, not at the same time. Don't do those two things. Call your dad and then separately, privately. Think about.
Lift up the rock.
Yeah, lift up the rock.
Aaliyah, what's changed for you as an actor now that you're a veteran of stage?
Oh no. Honestly, I was, I've had some friends come through, other actors, friends who've done plays, friends who haven't, and I think the thing I keep talking about is like I feel like I'm in the best shape as an actor, physically and so, but I'm just like I just feel like I'm getting like really worked, and it's such a nice feeling because when you're doing film stuff or TV, whatever, you're like, and you're not shooting for a while. When you're about to start, you feel so kind of rusty. And then even after you film, you're like, you're kind of done and you do a scene and you're like, oh, I'm never doing that again. Whereas this is like, it's like working on the same muscle. Like when you're actually in a gym, to do it properly, you have to build and do the same thing like over and over again to build it. And I feel like I'm really building actor muscles in a way that I'm proud of myself, because there's so many things where I was like, what if I can't remember the words, and I'm like, the words, what are you even talking about? So it's just like, it's nice to see, to see the difference of just from when we started. And I have this groundedness in me now that I'm like, oh, this has changed me. Yeah, forever, for sure, as an actor.
That was my conversation with actor Aaliyah Shawkat, playwright Claire Barron, and director Annie Kaufman. The play You Got Older is at the Cherry Lane Theater until May 3rd.